My name's Adele Onyango, and welcome to another episode of Legally Clueless. No, seriously, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Hey you, welcome to this episode of Legally Clueless. This is what's coming up.
A glass of water for me, I've told you, is 20 trips to the washroom. So that means that if I take about 10 trips to the washroom and there's still urine remaining in my bladder, it just becomes this acidic liquid that is constantly burning you. I'm a child. I don't even know how did we get here? How did we get here to an inflamed bladder that is, even to best part is he recorded everything and he got to play the video. I got to see that indeed this bladder is very sick in primary. Several times I was given a day refresh as an award for being a polite girl, being the most quiet one. People didn't understand that it's because at some point I think I was just traumatized as a child. When you're given an award, like I remember, like anytime there would be awards, I would get a couple of day refresh packets because you've been given an award for being neat. That's because you don't leave class, you don't play. I was not playing. I do not swim. I'm not allowed to swim because you've been told this can even cause more infections. I can't run. Movement is hard for me. So there's a day refresh for being neat. There's a day refresh for being polite because you do not talk. There's no one to talk to at home. There's no one to talk to in school.
That is part one of Annkia's story. We're about to jump into it a little later in this episode. First and foremost, welcome to the OG members who've been here from the jump. I truly appreciate you. If you're a newbie, and we've got quite a few new listeners checking in, welcome to the family. Here we are all about African stories, specifically African women's stories, and our healing and our journey to being our best selves. So on Monday, we have this show, Legally Clueless, where different Africans come and share stories from their lived experience. On Wednesdays, we have the Midweek Teas, where I unpack different topics that I think could be helpful to you on your journey of becoming or of being. Our newsletter also goes out on Wednesdays, so make sure you sign up for that on our website. The links are in the show notes. And then on Thursdays, we have For Mannerless Women, a show where we have different African women come through, share expertise and inspiration that is so necessary on our awakening. Do you feel that awakening on the continent? Because I really do. Like African women coming to their own, questioning who they've always been told to be, questioning who they truly want to be, and trying to like reach for that. It's such a beautiful time to be alive and to be an African woman. I truly believe it. So yeah, sorry, I went on a tangent. When I hear about our awakening, I just get super excited because it just feels like a lot of the sacrifices the women before us made, I can see myself living the result of those sacrifices, being able to change my mind, being able to live alone, being able to have hobbies and be happy, fucking rest. You know what I mean? It's truly incredible. It's truly incredible. Anyway, so I have two major things to share before we jump into the story, okay? The first one is that this Thursday, a very special season of For Mannerless Women is beginning. Oh my God. Like, honestly, internally, we are just so excited about this. And so I got together 6 of my favorite African women who are from Nigeria, from South Africa, from Zimbabwe, from Ghana, from Somalia. Oh my God. They're from outside Kenya. And I decided to have conversations with them on sensuality, pleasure, on spirituality. Oh my God. I can't wait for you to hear that particular episode. Because let me just give you a teaser. One of the ladies, I met her in Dubai in 2021, I think. And she is an incredible DJ dedicated to African music. And in the middle of her becoming this notable DJ, she gets called by, I'm just going to say her elders, because she has been chosen to be an ancestral healer. And so she has to go through initiation while showing up to gigs and like, oh my God. I can't wait. I can't wait to share all of these episodes with you. So the special season begins this Thursday. So wherever you're listening to this on, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on this. We are expanding. We're going past Kenya and connecting African women. It feels so good because this is truly my calling. This is truly my calling to serve African women and to be about our awakening, which includes our healing, which includes our unlearning. Guys, I'm so happy. Anyway, second thing I want to say before you jump into the story. If you are a newbie, I saw probably 2 comments that I just want to nip in the bud from Jeanette's story, which was in the previous couple of episodes. And one of them, first and foremost, we prioritize kindness here. We prioritize empathy. And some of the comments were like, oh, so-and-so is not a good storyteller, etc. Please, that is a sure way to get expelled from this community. The people who come on all of our shows are not performing, especially this show. They're not performing. We have not scripted their stories. Please trust and believe. In fact, when our correspondents reach out to storytellers, all we do is help them remember what story they want to share. And then we let them share their stories. These are raw stories. Not all of them are of happy, chirpy things. And nobody gets to decide who is good at telling their lived story and who is not. Honestly, it's not a performance. It's not a musician coming here to perform their song. Even then, a musician sharing their art with you is them really being vulnerable. And if you don't like it, which is your right, you keep it pushing. You scroll past, right? You don't stop and start poking at someone who has been vulnerable with you. That just is not going to fly. It's not going to fly here. Stories have an opportunity to spark empathy. Listen to the story with the acknowledgement that you're listening to another human, another African. Lean in with curiosity, but always remember, the people who come on the shows are not performing. They're being so gracious by opening up their lived experiences, their lives with you. What an honor. What an absolute honor. And I just thought the whole week, I was like, oh my God, I have to share this reminder with you, especially for you who maybe has just discovered us. There's no performances here. And the people that we honor the most, you and I, the people we honor the most are the brave Africans who come and share their stories and their insights with us. Cool? All right. Let's jump into part 1 of Annkia's story. First, I just love her name. I just love her name. And her story just really puts into focus how when we talk about illness, we're often focused on the diagnosis, but we forget the journey when you're sick and nobody knows what's wrong. Imagine being a child in class 3, trying to explain your pain, and you don't even have the language for it yet. So part 1 of Annkia's story dives into that. What was it like growing up with symptoms that left her constantly in and out of hospitals from when she was just in class 3? 100 African stories on Legally Clueless. Stories from Africa.
Hi, my name is Annkia Ngunjiri. I was born and raised in Githunguri. So would you believe that for someone who comes from a place where we plant a lot of coffee, that I'm actually a tea girl. I prefer a nice hot cup of tea. I am a product of my grandparents. It's a very honest, hardworking people. Fortunately, I was not lucky enough to have a dad around growing up. So my mom had a lot of help from my grandparents. I come from a family of three. So my mom, my sister, and I. My sister is an awesome human being. She has been awesome during this period. Not only this period, but since I was born, basically. From a young age, that's around like 9 years old, my mom noticed there was something very off when it came to playing. I wasn't very active. I had a very hard time in school, like sitting through a whole class. I was those kids who used to need permission like a million times to rush to their washrooms. And when you're 9 years old, this is not something you can articulate and tell your parent. There's something very off when you go to the washroom. Like, this is, what do I say? Is it TMI? Short call. Yeah. So when you're in class three, I was in class three. I remember my teacher. Then she wrote a note to my mom, like, well, if you're my age, tulikuwa na diaries. We had diaries. My teacher wrote a note to my parents, my mom, and she noted down there that she was like, Annkia doesn't seem to be comfortable in class. She has a hard time sitting through like a whole lesson. She seems uncomfortable when seated, and I was not very happy. And I remember when my mom saw this note, and she was like, "Well, I do not know what is happening, but maybe it's just a kid being a kid." There wasn't a lot of information back then on young kids can like get UTIs. So what my mom did is, I think we just brushed it off because everyone was quite confused. And I don't blame them really. But it came to a point where I could miss like a whole term from school. That was like in class 5 because of pain that I could not sit in class anymore. A glass of water for me meant 20 trips to the washroom. So that's not a kid that can stay in school really. In class 6, we were given advice. My mom is a nurse, so she was given advice from people around and friends, and she was told, "Have you tried taking her to a gynecologist?" And we did go to a gynecologist, and the gynecologist was like, "This is not a gyna problem. I'll refer you to a urologist." So you see, like, cause I don't know, like, as I said, I don't blame them, but also by the time we were getting to the urologist, things were not great. So we went to this urologist in Aga Khan, and he was an old man. I remember him. And the first thing he asked me was, "Have you ever had sexual intercourse?" I was like, "I'm 12." That because he listened to my story, he listened to my symptoms, and I remember I told him there was a point where I actually saw blood in my urine, like clots of blood. And he asked me, has someone ever touched you? Like has a man ever touched you? I'm like, no, no, no. And even asked my mom to leave, and he kept insisting that this might be something that is related to sexual assault. And I was like, oh, the being misunderstood continues. It's either we've gone from staying at home for a whole term because you're in pain. I could barely sit. This due to burning sensation. So when you see, when you explain this to a person, they see an STI. By the time you get to a point where someone can say, "Oh, this might be a UTI," all people could think about is an STI because of burning sensation. There's blood clots in your urine. You can barely see it. You can't hold urine. And this urologist, this old man, because I remember he was an old man, he's now very old. It's like a grandfather right now. He decided, let's do a couple of tests. And it took a million tests for this man to believe that I was not kidding, that I, a 12-year-old, when a 12-year-old tells you, no, I've never had sexual intercourse, I'm being very serious. So he was the first person to do a procedure in theater. And that's when they found, no, it's not a UTI, it's not an STI, it's just I have a narrow urethra. In my mind, when this doctor asked this question, the first thing I thought of was, I just want to get out of here. Like, when you've gone through this excruciating pain since 9 years old, and now you're 12, and the first thing someone asks you, a whole consultant, a whole specialist, the first thing they ask you is, while in pain, did you have time to be sexually active? Like, it didn't make sense to me. I was like, can we just leave? And even my mom at the time, like when we got home after the appointment, we didn't even talk about it, unfortunately. She did sweep it under the rug. And we just got home and we're back to, it's a normal day. We saw this doctor, and we are going to go for this procedure and know what's next. So there was a lot of confusion, and I felt very alone. I did feel very lonely. Especially this is a time when I think my sister was in boarding school, so there's no one you can actually tell. My grandparents also, they're being older, they don't have access to information. So you expect the people who should know better and do better, they didn't do right by me. So we did go for the procedure. Finally, we have a diagnosis. You have a narrow urethra. And at the time, I remember healthcare is expensive. So after the procedure, we didn't afford to get me to be admitted. I had to go home immediately after theater. So you've left theater, you're awake. Now let's go home. My mom was like, we actually didn't like take like a cab. We had to take a matatu, which was very painful. So the only help my mom had was her younger brother was there, and my mom was like, carry for me these things, and me, I'll help Jerry walk. And I remember crying the whole way back home. And I remember that night, my mom, being a nurse, she had to go for night shift. So I was left with this younger uncle who feels completely helpless at home. I can be very honest by telling you that things did not get better after that procedure. We did have to go back to hospital a couple of times. Now that you've found a diagnosis, you've been told you have a narrow urethra, this doctor has said, what I've done is I've dilated it to be bigger, to be a normal size. So you're supposed to be back to normal. So he kept asking, why? So when we went back to hospital and we told him, nothing has changed. It's still the same. And he's like, but I dilated it. How come? Is it narrow again? So a narrow urethra. When you have a narrow urethra, means that your bladder doesn't completely empty urine. So there's still, when you do go for a short call, there's an amount of urine that remains in your bladder, and that is just a base for infections. Because you can imagine, like, if a glass of water for me, I've told you, is 20 trips to the washroom. So that means that if I take about 10 trips to the washroom and there's still urine remaining in my bladder, and just becomes this acidic liquid that is constantly burning you, and it's just a base for infections. And that's why I was always on antibiotics. That's why I'm telling this doctor nothing is getting better. So this doctor has dilated this narrow urethra. He's told you it's back to normal, but you're still going back to hospital. So we did have to seek a second opinion, because you're getting older. I remember asking my mom, now that we are headed to class 8, and after that is high school, how am I going to manage? Will we feel the need to look for like a boarding school that is near home? Will I get to go to my dream high school, or will it be possible to be able to get like permission from school so that I can constantly go back to hospital? That's so stressful. Nobody wants that. I remember telling her that it took forever for these primary school teachers to get with the program, that Annkia needs, you have to give Annkia permission to go to the washroom. It's not that I'm trying to evade your lesson. I told my mom it gets tiring because not everyone is quite understanding. There are teachers who would make me sit in class and not give a damn. And I told my mom I can't imagine going through that in high school because having an older sister, you know that high school is in Kenya, especially public high schools, can be quite difficult. So we did seek a second opinion, and we were sent to another doctor, another urologist. I remember noting that we were not going to general practitioners, we were going to specialists. And this second doctor was like, oh my God, I think we can do another procedure in theater and take a look at this bladder and get to know what is happening. So this second doctor takes me to theater. I don't know if I was in class 8. I just remember being away from school in class 8. So I had to go to theater, and this doctor came up with a different diagnosis now. So this one told us it is not only a narrow urethra, but also your bladder is red and inflamed. So it's like a normal bladder is whitish, it's not inflamed. So it's like if it's red and inflamed, there might even be pus inside. I'm like, oh God. I was like, oh God, don't even say that. I'm like, I'm a child. I don't even know how did we get here? How did we get here to an inflamed bladder that is even to best part is he recorded everything and he got to play the video. I got to see that indeed this bladder is very sick. It was red, it was inflamed, it looked wrong. And he said, as much as we are dilating this urethra, clearly nothing is happening. It keeps getting narrow again and again. And this doctor decided my life in high school, based on, to get through like high school, I had to be on antibiotics throughout. So what this doctor would do is he would prescribe antibiotics, very strong antibiotics, for 3 months. So that means that when you go back home for your holiday or midterm, he gets you another prescription for another set of antibiotics. So my mom would come to school just to bring like another fresh set, like, she has enough funds to buy this very expensive and strong antibiotics. So what they did was just to numb the pain, but lost the plot that they still a very sick bladder here. The treatment in school was, of course, it was different. I was known as the kid who's always sick. So your friends, well, did I really have friends? Your classmates, they pity you from a very young age. Like, oh no, Annkia is in pain. Oh no, Annkia has not showed up for the whole term. Oh God, I don't even know what to say. It becomes hard to form connections with people in school because you also, as a kid, don't know how to explain to your friends. I think for most of them, us being children, that most of them, I'm pretty sure they thought I had diarrhea. Like she's rushing to the washroom. Like she's being given permission to go to the washroom every 10 minutes. Clearly, what is happening? What kind of illness is this? So they were clueless, and I too was clueless. And I remember, of course, kids being kids, people come up to me and ask me, Annkia, what's the name of your illness? And I could not tell them because I didn't know. There's no way, no one teaches you how to explain to your fellow 12-year-olds that you have a narrow urethra. Nobody. There's no guide. There's no blueprint for that. And you just seem like, I remember like at some point you even look like a liar. You're like, you're pretending. Now this is pretense. By the time people get to understand you, the teachers even get to understand you, she's a pretender. This must be pretense. Well, I'm pretty sure she just doesn't want to sit in class. And of course it did hurt, but well, you do develop a thick skin eventually, because I noticed from a young age that when you're going through pain, you don't have the bandwidth to accommodate people's feelings. It's just that thick skin develops as early as that class 6, that 12 years, that it got to a point where I didn't even care. I would go back to school and I would not speak. And I remember I remember being, I don't know if it was in class 7 or it was in that class 3. I'm pretty sure somewhere in primary. Several times I was given a day refresh as an award for being a polite girl, being the most quiet one. Like, people didn't understand that it's because at some point I think I was just traumatized as a child. When you're given an award, like I remember, like anytime there would be awards, I would get a couple of day refresh packets, because you've been given an award for being neat. That's because you don't leave class, you don't play. I was not playing, so I knew that I'm going to get a day refresh today for being neat, because I do not leave the class, I do not play with the rest during break, I do not swim, I'm not allowed to swim, because you've been told this can even cause more infections. I can't run. Movement is hard for me. So there's a day refresh for being neat. There's a day refresh for being polite, because you do not talk. There's no one to talk to at home. There's no one to talk to in school. So it was tough. When you look back at it, you're like, oh, there's something very wrong during that period, but people saw it as being neat and being polite. It wasn't. Missing school and being away for like a whole term surprisingly did not affect my academics. I I love reading. I do. And my mom would make sure that she gets like these practice exams. They're always at home. Those two booklets that had practice exams. So I always had a couple at home, and she would do her best to teach me. And also my sister during like a break from school, like she was in boarding school, but when she was home, she tried her best. For me, it was, but that was like when you're in class 6, nothing is really hard, really, in terms of academics. But when it got to a point where I was missing a whole term, let's say in class 7, now that one took a toll on me. I became frustrated, because you can imagine when you've missed a whole term and in class 7, you come back and you sit in class and you're completely blank. You don't know what they've learned. And the teachers, nobody will pause the syllabus for you for one kid in a class. So the teachers would say, I remember during like when we were taking like marks for exams, of course automatically for me it was 0. So they're like, student A got 95, they read out their marks 95, and then when you get to Annkia, okay, 0, moving on. And then you're like, let's go to the next chapter. Like, where were we before the exams? Like, and you're told, Annkia, don't worry, you'll catch up. Like, okay, I've missed the whole term, but thank you. I'll catch up. And I remember my mom, how do I put it? When I was doing well in school, nobody would show up for those prize giving days. So when I'm being called hapo mbele, like there's an award for Annkia for, she was number 2 in class, hata kama she missed a whole term. I was not present for a whole term, but there I am, number 2 out of a class of 47. So no one was present. But when my marks began to drop and I started being like, let's say like, you're now number 45 out of 47 students, my mom became frustrated. And I remember there's a day I was at home, because I was unwell, and I think I was watching, I was watching High School Musical, because I was bored. There was nothing really to do. And I remember she turned off the TV and she was like, so you just pick up a book and read. Like, what is this? And I was like, oh, my bad. Like, I didn't ask for this, but here we are. And just extend some grace. It's just one movie. Well, being a child with health issues was tough. No, and I thoroughly enjoyed days where we would spend our holidays with our grandparents. These were very understanding people. The zero frustration. They're like, why would you frustrate someone because of classics syllabus? No way. Like, bring Virginia and Jerry to Githunguri. Let walk around in that coffee farm with Babu, because home was not really a safe haven for me. And unfortunately, when things got really, really tough, in terms of when you undergo a couple of procedures in theater, they're quite pricey. And I remember my very absent and very abusive father. He decided, you know what? He decided to use my illness as an excuse to leave. Like, we didn't how do I put it? For him to be this, of course he was always absent, didn't get to see him uh, much as a kid. But when things got really bad, and he was like, I think he noted, like, for him, I think he noted from a young age that this was not going to be a very simple journey. So I remember he used this as an excuse to disappear completely in 2013. Like, we never saw him again. Like, of course he would show up, like resurface once in a while, and he would cause trouble. He was an abusive husband, he was an abusive father. And when he realized that if he stays and someone tells him provide 200,000 for theater again, this was stressful to him. So that's when he decided, I'll never resurface again. As a child, when you realize that this person has left because they do not want to be responsible for their children anymore, especially this ill child, oh my God, who's costing them antibiotics on antibiotics, and clearly there are more procedures in theater in the future. It does take a toll on you. And I remember my mom would call him and he would not pick. And then my mom would tell me, call your father. Like, because I think to her, maybe she thought, I if he picks up the phone and hears my voice, maybe something would change, and he would say, uh this is your daughter talking to you. This is your very young daughter talking to you. Maybe something will shift. There's a shift that will happen. No shift happened. He completely disappeared. That was it. I don't think I've ever been the same after that. From that period, the way you move through life with an illness is that you will always be a bother to people. There are days where I would not tell my mom that I am unwell, simply because I don't want anyone to feel like I am bothering them. This very sick bladder is cooking and cooking and cooking infections. But there are days where I would not even tell a soul that I am unwell. And I remember that is even in high school, that is what happened. That I would come back home during the holidays. My mom would ask, the medication is working? And I would say yes. They were not working, but I would say yes, because we don't want another parent to pack up and leave, do you? Yeah, once bitten, twice shy. And also, I remember, like, now that, of course, my mom has been a single mom forever. When you're back home and you realize she's paying school fees for. When I was in high school, my sister was in university, so she's paying school fees in uni. She's paying school fees in high school, and she has rent to pay, she has to put food on the table, she has to get to work. That's transport right there. And she's working these night shifts. So you decide the best you can do is just to say these antibiotics that are very strong and they're costing a lot, they're working. Yes, they are. Things went downhill from there. They did. I ended up after those two procedures in theater in what was that? In primary school, they ended up becoming more. I did get to a point where I was in excruciating pain, that I could not leave my bed in high school. And remember, those are the days where matrons would get you out of the dorms. It's like prep, so it was either life or death. And I remember my classmates had to help me get out of bed, and I was in so much pain. And that was, I don't know how many weeks it was to closing day, but they refused to contact my mom. And it's because I remember the nurse telling me, "You have medication here. Like, where is the pain coming from?" Ah, wow. I don't know. There's something off about education system. It's not very kind to everyone. Pretty sure there are people who are lucky enough to enjoy their time in school, but I didn't. I remember I was telling my friend recently when I was in hospital, I told my friend that I remember our deputy in high school. She I remember she pointed out that there's a day I walked past her, like we used to move by running in school. I remember MBR. We used to, and this lady was, she was kind enough to stop me and let me know that my academics were poor because I was always outside class. Outside class in that I was going to the washroom, not because I was going for sports or anything. So I was like, okay, thank you. I will keep that in mind. And she also pointed out that, like, I really want to go home. Like, I keep insisting that I am unwell. Oh, how dare I? When such people run the system, you don't really have an option, really. You can't, so it's not as if you can easily, like, coerce, like, a teacher to contact your parents and tell your parent that you're not doing well. So things did go downhill from there. And after that, I had to go for, well, it wasn't like a minor procedure in theater. We started getting to the major ones now. With time, as this bladder cooks and cooks infections on infections, you get to the major ones now. Done with high school, my father was still not in the picture. Of course, I don't know. He went to get a packet of milk and still at the shop. And I got into campus. And, surprisingly, what would shock people, it wasn't, for me, it wasn't a compliment. People were shocked that, wow, you finished high school. Wow, you're going to UN. You've made it to UN, really, with a health problem. You're a strong person. Like, even you'd even see it, like my mom would even praise God. She's like, oh my goodness, we've done it. Like, this is exceptional. To me, it wasn't exceptional. It was, as I said, the people who were supposed to do right by me did not do right by me. It's not you're not supposed to be given a trophy for finishing high school or getting into campus while ill. It's it just didn't make sense to me. Like, I felt that I deserved to be a healthy child. Like, high school, uh, get into high school, get into campus, and not do all these while being worried that, not you might not finish high school in the 4 years, because maybe you have to repeat a class or three because you missed a term or two. So I did feel that maybe someone had done something, things would have been different, instead of getting a trophy for doing all this well and well. because at the end of the day, you are still a child. It's not as if I was an adult then. So getting into campus, I was still unwell, but not to, how would I put it? Compared to when I was 9 years old, I was better, because when you're 9 years old, there's no diagnosis, there's no antibiotics in play. But being in campus, you also have a very high threshold for pain. You're older now, you know that there are foods that do help in such situations. Like, you've known that you should, if I stay away from pineapples, my urine will not be as acidic. If I stay away from oranges, my urine will not be as acidic. So it's easier. So, and also you've learned that if I decide to take a bike from here from the gate to the stage, less movement, less pain, less irritation. So it's I developed these coping mechanisms compared to when I was 9 years old. So as much as maybe people would think that maybe the meds are working, that bladder is no longer sick, it's because as in campus, you've done your research now. You've decided, let me become my own doctor. So you are seeing a specialist somewhere, but also you've also developed your own kind of to rituals. You develop your own rituals where you decided that if the doctor says, Annkia, take lots of water, and clearly he does not understand, this doctor does not understand you when you say lots of water means lots of trips to the washroom. Those many trips to the washrooms meant more pain for me, because it's like it's constant irritation. That means that I can't just relax. You're not relaxing your muscles. So I did get to a point where I would not do what the doctor was saying when it came to drink lots of water. So I did take less water, and I noticed there's less trips to the washrooms, there's less irritation. So yes, I was a bit defiant then. But yeah, so and they did help. Those coping mechanisms did help, but they didn't help for too long, because in that year in campus, I did have to go back to theater. I remember now why did I go back to theater? I had to go back to theater because that day is where you go for your industrial attachment. I did a course where I had to be on my feet all day. So I did food science and technology. So you have to be in safety boots all day, you have to be in a dust coat all day. And I was trying to prove myself during my industrial attachment. You'd think that I was a permanent employee, and I was not. I just wanted to show these people that if they get a whiff that I am unwell, they'll say we can give her a job later on, because she has proved herself. She's unwell, but she seems to know what she's doing. I don't want to be left out. I don't want to be the kid who's always sick anymore. So I was unwell. I remember even people in class noted that I was a sickly student, but that didn't bother me, because I was like, when I show up to this industrial attachment, I'm going to prove myself. And I did. I worked like a permanent employee, and it almost killed me. I I ended up in hospital, and I was like, oh shoot, now they know I'm sick. We were supposed to do an industrial attachment for 2 months only. I did mine for 4 months. So the fourth month is where I got to my breaking point, and I was like, okay, now that's enough. That's enough proving myself now. I was like, Jerry, calm down. That's enough now. And my body said, stop, or I'll stop. And well, it did stop, and I found myself in hospital. But I found myself in hospital with a very difficult doctor. This doctor saw my file, and he said, I don't think we should do another procedure. So the procedure that they had been doing to dilate this narrow urethra, he said, it gets to a point where if you do too many, now it becomes a cause for concern, and it becomes more harm than good. And I told him, but I can't live with this narrow urethra, can I? It's causing problems, and this is what we've been doing. This is what I am used to. This is what I was told, that this moving forward, there will be a lot of procedures in the future. So of course we did do the procedure, and there was there was no aftercare really. I used to go for follow-up appointments, and I would cry after those follow-up appointments. For the first time in a long time, I felt frustrated because I was an adult now, and I'm going into fourth year, my last year in uni, and after that it's employment, and I was frustrated because I've really proved myself during this industrial attachment, and now we are back to zero, back to we're back to procedures now. We're back to me having to explain to my employer that I may not be as reliable, and also I'm being advised to take it slow. I remember being asked, can you get an office job? And I was like, I've done product development. There's no office job for me starting out. Like I'm not even done with uni. After that, I stopped going back to hospital because I felt very frustrated. So that was in 2023. I did stop going back to hospital because this doctor would frustrate me. Well, not really the doctor, but the methods would frustrate me. There was no permanent solution. I remember there was always some sort of back and forth where we would move from a urologist to a gynecologist in campus now. I remember my urologist did a couple of tests, and there was now a new soldier was introduced in this war. And this soldier was ovarian cysts. Now we've gone into gynecology now. So I remember explaining to my doctor, this is what I'm feeling. These are the symptoms. The pain is here and there, but it's all in the abdomen. So this doctor will be like, let me see. We have to bring someone on board. We have to bring a gynecologist on board. I have to refer you to a gynecologist now. And I remember getting so frustrated because I was like, oh my God, I don't even have insurance. I'm just an attachee, a student, still under my mom's NHIF then. It got so frustrating because you now do not know where the source of the pain is. Is it urology? Is it a urology problem? Has it been a gynecology problem all this time? Is it that nothing comprehensive was done, like comprehensive tests were done? I was very confused at the time, and I was very frustrated. So I was dealing with ovarian cysts that kept recurring. They were quite painful, but I was also dealing with a very sick bladder. The gynecologist that I was referred to, I have never forgotten this doctor. This doctor told me to my face, don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but he told me that you have ovarian cysts, yes, but he was like, the pain can, it will just cease as you grow older. And I was like, no way, but I'm already older. Because I just didn't get what was happening at the time. Because I had carried how you carry every medical record since, I think, that class 3. And you bring it to this urologist. And then they refer you to this gynecologist. I was just given meds, and I was told, just come for a follow-up, maybe like a pap smear next time. And pap smear was clear, and really no one was, I felt like I was forcing these people to do comprehensive tests. Like you know that moment where you've been in hospitals for so long that you realize that no one has done, apart from an ultrasound and a couple of blood tests, no one has really done much. And you've gone to theater, and you've gone to theater a couple of times. Nothing was adding up. No one was giving me tangible information that could actually help. Yes, I have a sick bladder, and yes, there are ovarian cysts. What's the way forward? Will you just give me meds to manage my hormones and antibiotics to manage the sick bladder, and that's it? Like, is this the future? This can't be the future. It was a period where it was so frustrating because I was telling my mom, I feel like we are going back to the kind of pain I was feeling in class 3. And I felt that even she did not understand what I meant. And even I've been taking a look at photos from 2024 and 2023, and I look so different compared to currently as I'm seated here. There was something wrong. And finally, when we got into 2025, and someone who actually listened to me was my sister.
Catch more African stories in the next episode of Legally Clueless. That was part 1 of Annkia's story. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening to this episode on so that you do not miss out on part 2, which will be out next Monday. There were just so many moments in her story that hit me. But like the one thing that I think is top of mind is how easy it is for adults to mistake a child's silence for strength. And like when she was being awarded for being neat, for being this, that, and the other, and like she was carrying pain. That was the reason. And she was so young, she didn't have the words to explain it. And instead of the adults around her meeting her with curiosity and compassion, they're meeting her with like disbelief, misunderstanding, frustration, dismissal even. And I think one of the biggest reminders, and I've said this in the previous episodes, honestly, and it's something I truly believe in, is that children are whole beings. When a child keeps saying something is wrong, when, I don't know, their behavior changes or they like withdraw or they seem uncomfortable or different, imagine it's worth paying attention to. Let's not dismiss it as like stubbornness or laziness or like poor performance, or maybe this child is being difficult. Dude, this child is trying their best to survive and they don't even understand what it is that they're surviving, And man, Annkia is just remarkable. I really can't wait for you to listen to the other parts of her story because, man, despite everything she was carrying, she just keeps showing up. So part 2 is going to take another turn when she's searching for answers and eventually comes face to face with a diagnosis that completely changes everything. Now, as you've been listening to Annkia's story, if you have been moved to want to share your story as well, please fill out our storyteller form. A link to it is in the show notes, and one of our correspondents is going to get back to you. Remember to subscribe because this Thursday, I'm so excited. This Thursday, a very special season of For Mannerless Women rolls out. Okay, I'm not meant to tell you, but since you've listened to the episode to the very end, let me just whisper. The first episode, we're going to Ghana, and I've told you about this particular book. It's one of my favorite books. It has everything to do with sex and pleasure. And we're going to be talking to the author behind this book. It's a book that has gone global. That's all I can say. All right. That's all I can say. But thank you so much for listening to the episode to the very end. I truly, truly appreciate you. I value you so much. I'm so glad you're part of this family. I'm really just moving with gratitude today. Anyway, and until next time, just remember that I think that you have every single thing it takes to heal. That's it for this episode of Legally Clueless. You can share this podcast with your friends. You can keep it for yourself. I'm not judging. Just make sure you're here next week for the next episode.